Hey everyone, this is Triple Play Fantasy going to you live with two division previews tonight. We're covering the AFC South and AFC North, so make sure you tune in. We'll be helping you win your championship. All right, welcome in everyone. I'm your host, Zach at FF Triple Batman. I'm joined today by Joe Pepe at JPep20, Doc at Triple Fantasy, and it looks like he might be on vacation in a darkness retreat. We got David coming on as a guest, even though this is his own company, but that's great. D Mendy 02. How y'all doing tonight, gentlemen?
I'm good. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm going to WrestleMania, gentlemen. I know it has nothing to do with this, but I'm just putting it out there.
Oh, that's good. Are you missing a Phillies game to go out of it, though?
Bro, I'm not even missing a Phillies game right now. It's on the screen. What are you talking about?
Your true Philly sports fan fashion right there.
So you can watch them lose. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I'm going on mute.
I am embracing my inner Aaron Rodgers in this darkness retreat in here right now. I do feel like it's like one thing is not like the other. Like you two, look at your backgrounds and then look at mine. It's like sticks out like a sore thumb. So I hope the viewers can appreciate the diversity we're bringing for you guys tonight.
I love it.
It's perfect. I mean, we did AFC East last week or last episode, so you missed it by just that much. But hey, we got you guys for two divisions this week, so we're going with the double dip.
Did you just double dip that chip? Excuse me? You double dipped the chip. Double dipped? What are you talking about?
All right. So for those of you who don't know Seinfeld, go watch this on Netflix. If you do like Seinfeld, you just appreciated that reference and you appreciate our graphics. So thank you with that. But we're going to get right into it with the divisional previews. We're going to start with the AFC South. So let's start with the winners last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars. David, how are we feeling this year?
I think they are the favorites to win the division, and also the betting odds say so, as they are minus money on FanDuel, the only minus money team in that division, obviously. And rightfully so. This team looks like it's ready to take an even bigger leap this year. Year two of the Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence connection here. And they got a big piece this offseason in Calvin Ridley, who I do want to talk about first. Calvin Ridley, the last time we saw him on the field was electric. In his last full season, he was the wide receiver 4 in fantasy points per game. The year before that, he was wide receiver 18. Obviously, his last season, he only played in 5 games for various reasons. The mental health and the gambling cut his season short. But over his last 4 seasons, 12.9, 15, 18.8, and 14.2 fantasy points per game. He was also 7th in target share, 4th in air yard share, and 5th in route win rate among all wide receivers in his last full healthy season. So Calvin Ridley, long story short, he is an elite wide receiver. He is still very young. I believe he's still only 27 years of age. So he is someone that should still be able to make an impact. And if you don't believe me, you can watch the tape. I think we all at this point saw him and Zay Jones both run the same route, and you can tell just how different Calvin Ridley is compared to the average wide receiver. Calvin Ridley, for me, is a slam dunk top 20 wide receiver this year. So if you get him as your wide receiver too, you are doing really well in your fantasy drafts.
Awesome. Do you want to put a bet on it?
Oh God.
I mean, I'm always down for the bets, but who?
Yeah, you're talking to the right guy for that.
That's right. Wait, does any of you guys think he's not going to be a top 20?
Oh no, I
definitely think he's like a different class compared to everybody else they have there, and it's more of the situation for me is like Christian Kirk being more of the slot guy. Like we saw in the first game, he was moved inside. Zay Jones was still on the outside, but I think Kirk is fine too with the amount of money he's making. So I just think this offense is going to be fantastic in a really terrible division, while also facing the NFC South.
David, and you mentioned this too. He was off for, the gambling and for obviously mental health. How many times do players say that they've had nagging injuries for over a year? Oh, it's a cleanup. This has been something that's been nagging me a year or two. How many times do NFL players go multiple years not playing and it's not injury related?
Very few. But we saw with
Michael
Deshaun
Vick.
Watson, obviously he struggled. And I think that's the biggest concern is like, we saw Deshaun Watson struggle coming back. So couldn't that mean Calvin Ridley will struggle too? But it's very different playing the quarterback position and playing wide receiver, as you can see how much you have to, especially because Watson wasn't even able to be in the facility for a little bit of that time.
I was going to say, it's also different them coming back on the field and how they'll be received.
Yeah, like just fans in opposing stadiums. It really is going to be a dog. So definitely his ADP is kind of crept up a little bit as the off seasons come along here, but yeah, you should definitely be happy with him as your wide receiver too. The other Jaguar I thought we should talk about is Tank Bigsby, because he is one of the rookie running backs that I think has been definitely gaining steam more recently. 13 carries for 52, or sorry, 9 carries for 52 yards in his preseason debut. And many people will be like, well, that was with backups. He did get 1 snap with the starters. And that's obviously, I think, a little bit significant that they didn't just relegate him to complete backup duty. Etienne's going to be the main guy on this team. I expect him to be someone that's involved in the passing game a lot. He's a very effective runner. But here's something that everybody in our audience needs to know. Etienne, there was 19 players last season that had at least 20 carries with 1 yard to go for the first down last year. And only 5 of those players got less first downs than Etienne did. Etienne is not somebody that finishes at the goal line well. He's not someone that finishes in short yardage well. And I think that's where Tank Bigsby can kind of vulture some touchdowns away from Etienne. And if Etienne went down because of injury, which is not crazy to say with someone how like Etienne we've seen in the past, Tank Bigsby would be could be a back end RB1 or high end RB2 with that type of usage that the Jags would give him. So he's going to be, I think, one of the top running back handcuffs in fantasy this year. And he's going to be someone, if you draft Etienne, I think you got to go get Tank Bigsby as well.
So yeah, I'm out on Etienne. I don't see it. Love Tank Bigsby. Like once you get double digit rounds, I think he's a great dart throw. Though I would say if I'm drafting Etienne, I'd rather not take Tank Bigsby because I'm making a bet on Etienne, and I'd rather have. If I'm going to get Etienne, I might as well hope that he's going to be healthy. Now, if I don't have Etienne, then I'm definitely targeting Tank Bigsby and hoping that, not that we wish for any player injuries, but hoping that he gets more usage and gets those goal line carries.
TBT to when some people said that Etienne was like the dynasty RB1 after a couple good weeks. I swear the dynasty RB1 fluctuates like 5 times this season.
Yeah, that changes all the time.
And I do think that Zach brought up a good point. There's also the argument of if you draft the team's starter, do you take their backup or do you take another team's backup to be able to get potentially 2 starters? That's like the old age. Do you go your own backup or somebody else's backup?
I guess it just depends on the backup for me, to be honest. Like there was like the Dalvin Cook Madison situation. And I was like, I want that combo. And then there's other combos where like I don't need that. Like you said, you basically put like a bet in that Travis Etienne is going to be a pretty good back, even though, and like the stat that scares me the most is that, you know, Trevor Lawrence has the lowest check down rate tied with Jalen Hurts in the NFL last season. So we're not even really getting the passing. He's not getting those like short carry plays. He's not good at them. He's not efficient. So I'm not making the bet on him. But like Zach said, if I'm making a bet on a running back that early, it's very, very rare that I will take my own handcuff. I'm going to take yours and screw you, be able to trade with you, have a little bit more option with it.
What I think I want to ask you guys, when taking a handcuff, are you doing it from someone that is more likely to be the starter, somebody on a high scoring offense where if that starter did go down, they have a higher ceiling by ADP wise? Like what's your criteria when looking for a handcuff?
So for me, if I'm looking at a handcuff, 1, I want him on a good offense, but 2, I'm looking for honestly someone like a Tank Bigsby where I would make the assumption that if the starter ahead of him went down, he would see a bulk of the work.
So he's the clear-cut number 2.
Yeah, because there's some where like they might be the handcuff, but then they're still sharing the workload enough where like it's still not very effective in fantasy. So why waste draft capital on that kind of player?
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty much like I got to make sure he is the 2, that there's no like little competition like this year. And I'm using Alexander Madison again. If he goes down, I don't really know if I want that handcuff because I don't know who the hell it really is going to be. Will they take McBride and move him up into it with Ty Chandler? Will Nwangu get more play? There's just too much going on there. So like that's
Is
somebody
that
where
offensive
I'm
line
never
even
going.
good enough to support
Yeah.
that running
Now
game?
the offense will be good because the defense is so bad that they're going to have to put up points. But it's just a murky situation, and I don't do murky situations with bad, talented running backs.
Right. I agree.
And since we brought up handcuffs just real quick, I would say now this is way far in advance, but as you get closer to the playoffs in your fantasy season, that's when I start looking at handcuffs for my own team if I'm making the playoffs. So that way I do have that coverage, and I'm not getting screwed if I lose my starter after the first week of the playoffs. I then have that insurance. But when I'm drafting, I don't draft for insurance. I'm drafting to win.
Do you guys think, really quick before we move on, do you guys think in 12-team leagues or bigger that in today's day and age with so much data available, with so many different podcasts, with so many different people on Twitter talking about it, there's not really, I feel like, any handcuffs that are under the radar. So a lot of times I feel like a lot of the good handcuffs are already rostered. Again, whether it's by somebody taking their own handcuff or in their draft or somebody sniping them in the draft or early in free agency. I feel like usually the only time you can get decent RB handcuffs are if the starter and the backup go down. And that's when it's like all hands on deck for who's next up that's not picked up.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think it's
I
like
agree.
when you get I think it's helpful more when the second gets injured first, then you get the new backup, and then the starter gets hurt. That's really the only way to like not have a feeding frenzy on the waiver wire. But yeah,
AKA, we call that the Boston Scott. That's the Boston Scott.
Right.
That's
Against the
all it
Giants.
is. Yeah. You got to have the perfect storm, you know. But Boston Scott is that player because if Miles Sanders went down, but you already had an injury, you knew it was going to be Boston. So I was all for it.
The only reason third string running backs have existence is because of fantasy handcuffs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally agree.
And I just want to point out Z2 real quick, just because Doc's on here. He's saying Elijah Mitchell's the handcuff number one. There's no way that man is
already hurt.
Injured. He's already injured.
Yeah.
There's no handcuff on that team. I'm sorry.
I will have 0 Elijah Mitchell shares this year.
Who's their?
Yeah.
Why am I blanking on their third string running back right
Are you
now?
thinking Jordan Mason or Tyrion?
Yeah. I was gonna say if I know Michael
TDP,
Hastings for the Jags, and obviously
or Deebo Samuel. Is Deebo Samuel the handcuff? Like
at this point, just put Trey Lance back there and hand him the ball and let him run around.
Right.
I was gonna say they only put Trey Lance at fullback, not at running back.
That's a whole nother scenario. We cannot be talking about. Trey Lance will never get done this podcast.
That's right.
We're not even talking about the NFC this week, so we'll move on from that. Do you have anything else for the Jaguars, David? Or are we moving on?
I feel like, Trevor Lawrence, if you want to talk about him, I think everybody talks about the ascension of Justin Fields this year as a top 5 quarterback. I don't know if top 5 is necessarily where I would expect Trevor Lawrence to finish this year, but a top 7 or 8 quarterback that's going to have some number 1 QB weeks this year, I think is very realistic for him. I actually have been looking on FanDuel at his 40 touchdown bet at plus 1,600. And it's been something very intriguing to me, something that I've thought about putting money on, because I do think he is an outside chance to lead the NFL in passing touchdowns this year. Obviously, Joe talked about the lack of checkdowns to running backs. I do think it's going to be more of just an air it out type of offense under Doug Peterson. And I do think Lawrence makes a big step this year and is going to be somebody that you're talking about as one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in football by the end of the season.
David, his passing touchdown line for the season is 26.5. So you're smashing the over.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm smashing the over on that. That might be an early smash the over thing I'll put out early. Yeah.
See what I did?
Yeah, I like it. Good for the brand.
So we bring David back on, and we got to bring back all the smash or pass. We should have added that segment. That's my mistake.
We should have, yeah.
That was a miss by me. I was so focused on the double dip. I'm so sorry. All right. So we'll move on to the Titans. And I don't know about you guys, but this feels like a really weird team to talk about for fantasy. So we have Tannehill's the obvious starter, but you don't want to draft him at all. Even in, super flex leagues, sure, because you'll take any quarterback. But in 1 QB, you're not drafting him. If they end up just doing horrible this year, which I think they're a well-coached team, so I don't expect them to be horrible. But if they completely crater, I could see them putting in Levis or Willis, or both of them, rotate him through just to see what they have in them. So it's a weird situation for the quarterbacks, even though we know Tannehill's a starter. From a fantasy sleeper standpoint, there is not a lot of talent beyond the obvious guys on the team. So I'm going with Kyle Phillips, which he's not getting drafted. You should not draft him, but he's one of those players where you should look at him for the first like month or so. Is he running enough routes? Is he playing in the slot? Is he getting some targets? He might be a waiver wire pickup. And then for me, the overvalued player is DeAndre Hopkins. He's currently the wide receiver 21, going 51 overall. Just feels really rich for me when he's now on a new offense. It's a horrible offensive line. He's got great hands. We're not doubting his ability as a wide receiver. He's definitely lost a step. He was never a real burner to begin with, but I just don't know if he's going to return that current ADP value. I'm afraid he's more of like a wide receiver 3, and he might give you some wide receiver 2 weeks. Might even get lucky with like a 2 touchdown game, get you a wide receiver 1 week. He feels too risky for me at that price. And then best fantasy rookie, easily Tyjae Spears. He's like another one of those handcuff running backs we talked about. To me, I would consider him like a lottery ticket running back. I don't see him having really much value at all unless Henry gets hurt, but he's one of those guys, he's free right now in draft. So if you get him in the last round, you stash him, or like I said, just keep an eye on him on the waiver wire. He's one of those guys, if Henry gets hurt, which we don't want to see, but he's got a lot of mileage on him, getting up there in years. If he goes down, then Tyjae Spears would have a pretty massive workload. But again, behind a horrible offensive line, so does that really matter if Derrick Henry goes down at that point? Is their season just cratered, as we were talking about before?
Yeah, this is a team that I'm not really going to target whatsoever, not Treylon Burks. And this is nothing against any of them. I just don't know how much offense they're going to actually put on the board each game. So I just feel like I'm getting like an unsafe floor. Even with Derrick Henry, it's not something I'm feeling. I'm not really into this team all too much. Now, Derrick Henry does have the playoffs of the Houston Texans twice. So does that change your mind with him? Or is it just like a no-go? Like, are you in on him? Are you out on him? Do the playoffs matter to you? How do we all feel about Derrick Henry? Like, convince me, please.
I feel like in fantasy football, the one thing you want to be is that year early where you predict somebody is going to decline. Like, everybody wants to be that person with Kelsey each year. And with Derrick Henry, this is the year that he levels off. I think he does a little bit just from a stat-wise standpoint, but I still think we'll see flashes of the old Derrick Henry. I think the roster is just not as talented.
I disagree in the sense that I think Derrick Henry is still going to be decent this year. He's younger than you think. Remember the beginning of his career, he shared carries with DeMarco Murray. So I think that's he has a lot of carries on him recently, obviously. And it depends for me. It's all about where you get him, right? Like if people have Eric's mindset where they're like, yeah, I'm out. This is the year Derrick Henry slips and he falls. Like I have no problem scooping him up. It just depends on where you think you want him at that point. Like if Derrick Henry, to me, I get him in in a PPR league. If he falls to like the 3rd or 4th round, that's definitely where I'm going to be interested to start taking a look at him. And again, it's just, to me, it's all about the value where you get him at. So if he doesn't perform quite as what I'm hoping, but I got him at a cost, I'm not going to be too upset about it at that point.
Yeah, and to be fair, the biggest thing about the Tennessee Titans for me is I'm targeting their defense in DFS because that looked atrocious against the Chicago Bears the other day. Like 2 passes on the screen passes, and they scored touchdowns. Give me all the Saints in week 1 for DFS. I know that has nothing to do with this show, but I'm here to make people money. Let's make money.
That's right.
I love it. And I echo everything I said with Henry. I did want to bring up something that Joe said about like, oh, what about fantasy playoffs? It is way too early to think about the fantasy playoffs. We have no idea who's going to be injured, who's going to actually be way better than we thought, who's going to be worse than we thought. So if you are making draft picks based on the fantasy playoffs, you're probably doing something wrong. So it's just different from from best ball where you're trying to get your week 17 correlation and all that fun stuff. That's great. But in redraft, don't even think about the playoffs yet. That's something you think about halfway through the season. You start looking at trades. And then I wanted to bring up just a quick question here. And this is more from, again, a process standpoint. So NBA Rigged asked, what grade would you give Will Levis in his preseason game? 1, I didn't even watch the game. No offense to preseason or Will Levis. It's week 1. But is that a
I like both me and Dave put it up, and then both said, "Oh, damn, wrong way." And like,
I don't understand the laws of the camera.
Yeah.
Are we going with a C? Is that so average?
C for me.
I did a
to me.
D.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't care about preseason games because they're playing vanilla defenses. Like this
Yeah.
doesn't tell me anything. And I never thought Will Levis was good before he came in the NFL. I'm still not going to
Same.
think he's good in one preseason game. So I'd much rather, if you're a Will Levis fan, I'd rather see him sit all season, learn something, and then let's see what he does next year if he plays next year. But
Zach,
here's
if that
my
was a
rule.
Twitter thread, I would have retweeted it.
and here's my rule when
I'll
it
type
comes
it
to
up.
Will. When it comes to Will Levis, here's my rule. If you can't become the starter at Penn State and stay the starter at Penn State in a terrible quarterback situation, you're not that good. I'm sorry. Like you couldn't get that and you had to transfer. I want nothing to do with your muscle bound, banana eating, mayo drinking weirdness. I want nothing to do with that.
Joe's the
Man.
Philly guy. He knows the Pennsylvania gossip.
Dude, Sean Clifford stinks. He was terrible. Like I watched
Or
every
Sean Clifford
game.
catching strays on the AFC
Yeah.
South.
Listen,
AFC North.
I come firing. I come firing.
Do we get to
man.
take our victory laps like the rest of Twitter when Will Levis was bad and everybody said, "I told you so"?
Oh yeah.
I think I saw that going around like oh wow, great analysis. We all said he was horrible.
All right. Well, with that wonderful breakdown of the lovely Titans that we all feel down and depressed about, let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts with Doc. How are we feeling about the Colts? We got some exciting news. I think it came out today.
Yeah, so
Okay,
Anthony
sorry.
Richardson is going to be the starter. And he's somebody I think
I
that
didn't hear that.
oh, David's
Is he
been living
really?
under a rock.
Yeah.
Darkness retreat.
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
just kidding.
Breaking
I
news
went
for
along
David.
with it.
No, it is breaking news for David. What I think is going to be interesting about Anthony Richardson, he threw 393 pass attempts in college and threw under 55%. Now, we've seen QBs that have gotten better with accuracy as time has gone on, but that's a considerable amount to think that he's going to jump in one season. Now, he did have 654 rushing yards his last year, but he had 2 carries for 7 yards in the preseason. The pro game is completely different than that. I think QB 16 is a little too high. In my Scott Fish draft, he went in the 3rd round. There are some I saw him go in the 2nd. I think everybody wants to sometimes hit that lightning in a bottle, that rookie that can give you that rushing upside. But I don't think the Colts are legitimately stacked on offense, and that's including the Jonathan Taylor situation. That's why I'm dinging him down. I think I'm interested to hear your guys' opinion on Jonathan Taylor. I can't take him at RB8, ADP 16. I think no matter what team he plays for with his ankle and the holdout, there's no way he plays full 17 games.
And to me, I don't let's just say he stays on the Colts because I'm not going to start speculating trades and everything like that. He's on a team with a mobile quarterback, and we all know the rules when it comes to running backs with mobile quarterbacks on bad offenses. It's not something I want to pick because you will lose your draft in the first few rounds if you pick terribly. You'll lose the draft, you'll lose the league, you lose it all if you do terrible in your first couple picks. I'm not playing with that.
Where would he have to fall in a fantasy draft for you to draft him?
3rd round.
Yeah, maybe 3rd. But even then, it just depends who's still on the board around him because there's definitely a wide receiver I want.
Yeah, and it would also depend on if I have a couple running backs at that position. Like, let's say I was able to get Christian McCaffrey and then I go wide receiver 2nd round. I might not reach for Jonathan Taylor, like Joe said, if I like wide receivers there. I just would never want to take somebody with that early of a pick that you're already having skepticism that they play a full season, whether it's because of contract, whether because it's injury, he might get traded. I think that's a risky move to take. And the one thing about Anthony Richardson too, Gardner Minshew is his backup. Gardner Minshew went 6 of 6 for 72 yards in the preseason, and he's proven to be a capable backup.
No, we're not doing this because we're not talking about Gardner Minshew here. Because you know what's going to happen? He has a little team of trolls, and they go around Twitter, and they find anytime he's mentioned, and they blow my DMs up because he's
Is this true?
Good. Oh, my God. It is nonstop. It's like me versus the Minshew Mania every single week, and it's so annoying.
All right, so we need to tag Minshew on this show real quick so we can get some clicks, get those views. Sorry about Joe's DMs. Not sorry. I did want to bring up real quick Anthony Richardson because you are out on him, right, Doc? Is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I take a chance on a best ball league or something, but to think that, I mean, QB 16, there's still talent around there. Probably
so I'm gonna be selfish a little bit and talk about my own league, which nobody cares about. But I just did a draft last night. Not important. I ended up waiting. I was the last one to take QB. This was kind of a weird draft, so it was all over the place. Not important. I got Richardson was my first QB I took, and then I immediately followed up with Geno Smith because he's got an amazing start of the season. So that way I'm kind of covered either way. If Richardson ends up blowing up, great. If he doesn't, I'm still covered with Smith. But I did want to bring up friend of the show, Heath Cummings. He was talking about Anthony Richardson a lot today. I know his Twitter notifications were getting blown up, but I thought he had a great tweet because people were giving him crap talking about how I think he had Richardson like top 10 easy after this was announced. So this is for 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. So Josh Allen was one of the worst passers in the league as a rookie. He was QB2 the last 6 weeks of that season. Lamar Jackson, 159 passing yards per game as a rookie. He was QB7 after he became the starter. Justin Fields, 149 yards passing per game last year, QB5 for the season. Daniel Jones, QB10 in 2022 with 15 passing touchdowns. Because the whole point is when they're a running quarterback, they can do amazing for fantasy football, even if they're not great for NFL because of all those rushing points they get. Because you got to figure 60 yards rushing is the equivalent of a passing touchdown.
Zach, I totally agree, and I do think he will have some QB1 weeks where he could rush for 2 touchdowns, or he could, if he breaks a 70-yard touchdown run, that's 13 points right there, and that can make your week just from one play. But I do think he is going to, what's going to happen if the Colts are behind in game script and he has to pass.
Did Justin Fields have to pass when the Bears were always behind?
That's what I'm hoping for. I actually kind of hope that happens, get a little prevent defense, and then Anthony Richardson just gets 10-yard run, 10-yard run, 10-yard run. Like, I don't need him to throw the damn ball. Play the option for all I care. Just run the damn ball for me.
I ask you guys this, though. Justin Fields is a better passer than Anthony Richardson, right? Are we all agreeing on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, stronger arm goes to Anthony Richardson, but yeah.
Do you think defenses then play him to run a little bit more, or maybe play everybody up a little bit more compared to Justin Fields because they respected his pass a little bit more, and so he had better opportunities for running lanes? And now with Anthony Richardson, that they might play him to run a little bit more and dare him to pass?
But Richardson's got a cannon, so if you want to play up on him, there's enough speed on that wide receiver group. He'll still launch it down the field and they'll score.
He has an arm, but again, the accuracy, which we saw in college, was a huge issue. That's where I feel like teams might be
did
show me that you can fit it in those.
Well, so here's the thing.
At least early in the season, I'm interested if teams are like, I dare you to be able to hit them accurately. And then, if he starts doing that, then maybe but I think that's my biggest concern with Anthony Richardson. I do obviously think I would be shocked if he's not a top 10 quarterback if he plays all season, just with that rushing upside he has. But that is the one thing I'm worried about is, hey, Justin Fields, we can't play him to run as much because he will beat us with his arm. Anthony Richardson, it's okay, you're going to have a guy open downfield, but can you hit him when an NFL defense is coming at you and you can't scramble the same way you did in college? So that's what I'm looking for him early on, but he's an easy, if you want a home run pick as a QB2 to have on your bench, he's the guy.
Is this fair to say this is a potential Anthony Richardson line? 12 for 25, 146 yards, an interception, 60 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
That's what I think you'll see from him a lot of weeks.
Look, here's my thing. If you use Tim Tebow, you're going to use Anthony Richardson. That's, if Tim Tebow was usable, and he was, okay, well, there you go. If Tim Tebow was usable, so will Anthony Richardson. Like you said, they will probably force him to throw, but all it's going to take is one 60-yard bomb, and that's going to stop real quick.
Yeah, I just think with Doc, the ADP he was sharing was, you said, at QB 15. I just feel like that's a value for the potential upside. And like you said, if he's your QB2 or if you waited, there's another guy you can pick up off the waiver wire. You drop him, you move on if it just doesn't work out. But I just think he has a ton of upside. I'd rather stash him on my bench. Let's see what happens. And you might win a championship that way. So anything else you got, Doc, for the Colts? I know we kind of derailed it with
I guess the last thing I'll say is Josh Downs as a rookie. He had 2 for 29 in the preseason game. Michael Pittman is obviously the wide receiver 1. But after that, I think it's up in the air. He could be fighting with Isaiah McKenzie in the spot. And every wide receiver is playing with a new quarterback. So nobody has a rapport from seasons past. So, that's, I think, more beneficial for a rookie than a veteran.
Put some respect on Jelani Woods' name. You're not going to even bring him up.
I mean, come on. If you don't
talk
get
about Cole Kmet all the time, you're not going to bring up Jelani Woods?
if you don't get a top tight, Cole Kmet just got paid. They want to get him involved.
Block. He got paid to block, Eric.
Okay, we are not going down Cole Kmet again.
No.
On a non-NFC show.
All I'll say is Indianapolis Colts, besides the 1 year of Eric Ebron, I feel like our DFS guys, like Mo Alley Cox getting a random 2-touchdown game, or who is the
Jelani Woods just
Grayson,
baby hands.
Kyle Grayson, you got Alec Pierce, yeah.
Jelani Woods, I want to make according to Fantasy Pros ADP, Jelani Woods is the tight end 30. Where is he? Should do
40.
Control.
I didn't even know we could put him that far down.
You know, it's bad when you have
40, tight end 41.
That's why I'm not talking. How many leagues are going to have 40 tight ends rostered?
He's the starting tight end. They have Jimmy Graham ranked ahead of him. They have Rob Gronkowski ranked ahead of him. He's not even playing.
Because Gronk could still come out of retirement and still score more than Jelani
David
Woods.
Jody Fortson tore his ACL today. They were talking about.
Did he really?
I don't know if it was the ACL, but he's out for the season.
Are you serious? Actually, didn't know that.
Oh, we're breaking news even about his team.
Well, you're in your darkness retreat, so you can't blame you on that.
Oh my God. He actually is very useful. People won't even realize how useful he is for this team. That's
not this year.
He's good. He's good for one tight end shovel pass on the goal line a season.
Dude, he's 6'8". He's gigantic.
How do we always end up here where we're talking about those? We're talking about the tight end 41 and a guy who's not out for the season. So with
just
that,
where I'd be ranked, also putting Jelani Woods versus Dalton Kincaid. I'm not hot taking that. Dalton Kincaid is better, but Jelani Woods needs to be talked about. So just in case he watches the show,
here's some math for you guys. Boom. All right. So with that, we're gonna move on to another team just stocked with talent. They're not. It's the Houston Texans. So,
man.
Joe,
see what happens. This is what happens when you're in the group chat and you don't pay attention and you just say yeah, I'll take anybody. You get stuck with the Houston Texans because there's just nothing I really truly care about on this team. Yes, CJ Stroud will probably be the starting quarterback, but I'm not drafting him in 1 QB leagues. Like you said, Superflex, whole different story. We're not going to talk about that. If you want to take a shot on him, great. Last round, you can, but there is no reason to do that. So we're going to jump right over to quarterback situation because it doesn't matter for fantasy. Then we're going to talk about our sleeper and our rookie at the same time because they're one in the same, and it's Tank Dell. And yeah, I've been a Tank Dell guy since he's come out. It hasn't just been because I watched one preseason game and he had a great concentration catch. The guy could separate. And again, this is another last round pick. This isn't somebody that you're going to grab. He's a dart throw, and he's the definition of dart throw. He can get away from people. They're going to be behind. If you're in a PPR league, I really do think Tank Dell could be a great last round pick for a lot of receptions. I'm moving past all this, though, because I want to hear the conversation because I'm one of the few people firmly out on Dameon Pierce because the man was very inefficient with a lot of volume. And he got a lot of volume last year because Rex Burkhead was the only other running back that mattered in that system. And, well, Rex Burkhead sucks. I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat it. So now we got a guy that is in a brand new system, isn't this team's guy. They went out, signed another dude, Devin Singletary, who we know can play football, who will be used. There will be about 8 to 10 rushes, I'll say, every game, 8 to 10 attempts, maybe up to 12 touches, counting in some targets. And now you got a guy in Dameon Pierce who was inefficient and losing that volume. Why would I want that from the 4th round talent when this team said, hey, we should go get somebody else. We don't fully believe in him. Let's go get somebody else in this system. I do think Devin Singletary's talented enough to take more than enough away from Dameon Pierce to not warrant where the last time I saw him, he was going about 6th round. I don't know if it's moved. I haven't looked in the last few days. How do we all feel about Dameon Pierce? Because I'm going to shut up for a minute and listen.
RB19 right now, the Fantasy Pros consensus ADP. So the running backs that go around him, would you rather have him or Miles Sanders?
Miles Sanders.
I agree.
Mhm.
Would you rather have him, or would you rather go the running back after him, Alvin Kamara?
Oh, that's tough because of the suspension. So that's
I'll
a
take
tough
Dameon
one.
Pierce.
Yeah, I guess I'll go Damian there, but that's just because I'm missing 3 games. I would rather, or 4, whatever his suspension was, but I'd rather have the better offense out of the two if he wasn't suspended.
So again, I think it depends on how you draft, because in this range, it's like Cam Akers, James Conner, Rashad White,
James Conner.
Alexander Madison. Like those are the guys that you have to decide. Like if you need a running back, those are the guys you're picking between in this range. So like
I'll
that's
take Miles Sanders. I'll take Alexander Madison. I'll take James Conner. I'd probably take Cam Akers over him too.
So
I like them all better.
So Joe, everything you said of how things can change from last year for the worse, I'll flip it and say things could be for the better. They won 1 game last year. So I think just from a team and especially now with the new head coach they got in D'Amico Ryans, I think it's a little bit of a changed culture. You'd agree they get more than 1 win, right?
Maybe. I agree. I got to look at that schedule, man. Didn't they get 2 wins? Didn't
Yeah, they got more than
screw
1.
them? Because they lost the first pick because of that.
I'm pretty sure they won their first. It was the Bears that won their.
You
first
know what? I'm looking at 1 game that they won and that Dameon Pierce was in.
Yeah, they won. They won 2 games. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but even just from a game script, even just from a game script perspective, you're now playing from behind, which limits what you can do as a receiver. And once again, I'm not going to tout that Dameon Pierce is a great receiver, but I do look at some of the volume he was getting when games were actually closer. 15 for 69, 20 for 80, 14 for 131. But games that they were losing by 2 scores, 5 for 8, 10 for 8, teams would stack the box. And I think having a more mobile quarterback than Davis Mills last year, or just, if they would get in a rhythm on offense and Davis Mills makes a bad pass, then teams know you're going to run the ball. I think the Texans were so one-dimensional last year. Dameon Pierce was the only bright spot. Besides Brandon Cooks, I'll say.
Just those good games you mentioned, I don't remember them completely offhand, but 15 for 60-something,
you don't remember
20 for 80.
You don't remember what 27 for 139 against the Eagles?
Because the World Series was on that night. I wasn't watching the Eagles that night. I was watching the World Series. They came on the same night. It was game 3. No, it was game 4 or 2. One or the other. Who knows? I was drunk. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I was drunk. But like those higher games outside that 100-something yards, like that 20 for 80 doesn't excite me. 15 for 60-something doesn't excite me. So if that's up towards the top end of his games for the season, that doesn't excite me. And I don't know how much better this offense is truly going to get. Like, I get CJ Stroud's a little bit better, but he suffers when it comes to pressure grade. Like, he struggles with pressure. Could he just be a tiny bit better than Davis Mills, and then they're really just kind of in the same boat up a creek because they sold their first-round pick? That's where I feel like it lands for them.
I wouldn't take Dameon Pierce in the 4th, but if he dropped to the 6th and I could get him hypothetically later than I did last year, I would be okay with that.
The one thing with Dameon Pierce that I think is interesting, I'm double checking right now. The Texans have a bottom-ranked offensive line according to Sharp Football Analysis. They're 19th ranked offensive line. If they are scared of CJ Stroud taking 40 dropbacks behind that offensive line, if they just don't give the ball to him to at least kind of make it so Stroud doesn't get gun shy and starts feeling like you can imagine when a rookie quarterback has no time behind a bad offensive line, what that leads to. So maybe just the fact they might lean on the run game even more so, just so he can feel more comfortable. But again, I don't think he's a great pick. But
now, how many touches do you think Devin Singletary is going to get in a game, though? Because he's better than Rex Burkhead. We all have to agree there. Let's just be honest. So like he should get more play in these games because he is a semi-talented running back. I'm not going to pretend he's a stud or anything, but he's enough to spell out Dameon Pierce, just enough to take away that volume. And if you're inefficient, not a lot of volume on a bad team, that's like 3 things in a cauldron that I don't want.
I would say this, though. I think collectively they pass less than they did last year. I think they're going to have, try and be physical on defense and run the ball because that's what D'Amico Ryans came from in San Francisco.
I could see it being like a 60-40 split, Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary. I think it'll be pretty I think it'll be closer than people think. So
Yeah.
I probably won't be drafting any Texans, to be honest with you. Like
Same.
I don't want the headache. Like I know we're talking about them, but there's nobody on this team. Again, maybe Tank Dell is like a last pick of your redraft league, of maybe taking a shot on somebody. But again, like this offense is going to be probably bottom 5. That's probably being generous to say, like, not instead of bottom 3, but like there's nobody exciting.
I don't want it. Yeah, I just don't want a piece of it. So very simple rule: if it's a really bad offense, probably stay away from it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and with that, we just spent 40 minutes on the wonderful AFC South, killing all of our time for the amazing AFC North. So we are going to fly through the AFC North, but we're going to hit you with the good, actionable content that you need from this amazing division. So with that, we will get right into the Cincinnati Bengals, which is a great team. So, David, what are we doing with the Bengals?
Did you guys give me the Bengals because of the one player? Was that on purpose, or was that just complete coincidence?
Coincidence.
Okay, well, I was going to say you guys are the best if it was purposely. But so I'll talk about the Bengals. There are a couple players I'll bring up here. You don't need me to talk about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. You guys know they're studs. They should be drafted at the top of their positions. Not much about them. Tyler Boyd is, if there is such a thing as a wide receiver handcuff in fantasy, he fits the definition of a wide receiver handcuff, because if T. Higgins or Jamar Chase go down, he is somebody that is going to be useful in a 12-team or deeper league. In 2 games without Higgins in his career, Tyler Boyd has 13 catches for 154 yards. And in 3 full games that he's played in without Jamar Chase, he has 18 targets in those 3 games. So he is heavily utilized and becomes the wide receiver 2 in those games. So again, maybe if you're in like a 12 or 15 team league, you can be one of those wide receivers that's kind of at the end of your bench, but definitely not someone you're starting otherwise. A tight end sleeper is Irv Smith. His best year, he had 30 catches for 365 yards and 5 touchdowns. And he actually missed some time also that season. Injuries are the biggest thing with him, but we just saw Hayden Hurst had 70 targets last year and 54 receptions in this offense. And Smith has never even had 50 targets in his career. So he's stepping in a nice role that we've seen CJ Uzoma and we've seen Hayden Hurst excel at. So he's a definite tight end sleeper if you want a tight end 2 to kind of draft at the end of your bench there. And my number 1 fantasy sleeper in all of fantasy, and I don't see anybody else talking about this dude on Twitter. If they are, they're hiding under the rocks or something. Chase Brown is that dude. He is going to be, I think, the top running back handcuff to roster here in this season. And yeah, can I talk about Jahmyr Gibbs as someone who's going to break football? Yes. Can I talk about, we talked about Tank Bigsby already. We talked about, there's like so many more high profile running backs, but Chase Brown is going to be the number 2 running back in a Cincinnati Bengals offense that is going to be one of the best in football. Chase Brown, for those of you guys that have never heard of Chase Brown, he was a workhorse for the Fighting Illini last year, had 328 carries, which sounds like a lot, and it is, because it was second most among all running backs in the nation. His 355 plays from scrimmage were the most in all of college football, and his 1,883 scrimmage yards were 3rd most in all of college football. He needs to work on his pass protection. There's no doubt about it, but this dude just had 3 catches for 33 yards in the preseason, so he can catch the ball. His 8 for 12 does not look great, but 2 of those carries were on 3rd and 1 when the team needed him to convert on 3rd and 1 short yards. He converted both times. His coach talked about him and said it wasn't pretty, but he did everything we needed for him to do on the field. He is going to be the number 2 back for this team. We have no idea with Joe Mixon what's going to happen with him and his legal situation. He also has had injury concerns throughout his career. Chase Brown is somebody that I think is going to be very useful for fantasy, and his ADP is ridiculously low. He's somebody, again, if you're looking to potentially have somebody that makes a huge difference for your team that you draft at the end of your draft, he's the guy.
Dude, Joe Mixon has 2 legal issues, by the way.
Oh, that's even better. 2 legal issues. I just
even more of a clear path.
I see people talk about the same sleepers, and he never gets talked about. That's why I just think it's like interesting.
That's fantasy football Twitter, man. 99% of the people talk about the same people all damn week.
Yep.
All the time.
Hey, but those 99% can win you your league if you follow.
That's right.
We're not doing that. No.
I just want to know how they get those numbers. Do they like poll people like Family
I just want to
Feud?
know how they write that many like I guess they're not tweets anymore, but that's just so long. I don't want to read that. Bring
Does it
back the
bother-
160 characters. Like I'm
It's
I'm
just
fine with
math,
that.
Doc. They're just doing
Does
math.
it bother you though when people like are like Jordan Addison is my sleeper, Jahmyr Gibbs is my sleeper?
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, are you gonna take a victory lap when it hits? Like, what is it? What are you doing for people? Like everybody knows that. Like, give me somebody that's ADPs like in after 200. Like, give me like that's to me like that's like
and that's why
such
I
a
like Chase Brown. That's why I like Chase Brown because like you gave us a path of a guy who probably won't get drafted in most leagues, so he'll be a last round pick if you really want it to be. And if you really want to be those, like I'm thinking of the playoffs, even though we just told you not to, he gets the Chiefs in week 17. So if there's an injury or something happens at that point, have fun with it.
I mean, we can say Chase is on the case, and you guys were expecting us to talk about Jamar Chase, and we just gave you a few minutes on Chase Brown. So you're
that's
welcome.
right.
Getting
This
you
is
ready
what
for
people
those.
need to hear.
This is getting you ready for the deep drafts. We already know you're taking Jamar Chase. There's no stress there.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else with the Bengals, or you want to finish?
Those
it
are
with
the three
Chase Brown?
guys. Everybody else that you would draft: T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. Like, there's no analysis needed on those guys.
Perfect. So with Doc, we're going to your hometown team, the Baltimore Ravens.
The hometown team that I don't support. Let's put that in there.
They're still the hometown team.
I want to make sure I'm a proud Ravens hater.
He lives in Baltimore. He hates the Baltimore Ravens. How does that work?
That's right. So what I think is going to be interesting for Lamar Jackson this series, QB5, I think he's at the right point. Obviously, if he's healthy, I think he passes his season or his career high in rush or passing yards at 3,127. Keep in mind, he's only thrown over 3,000 once. The rushing stats will probably go down. He had 764 yards in 12 games last year. He has gotten paid, but also with the less rushing attempts, we're going to see less fumbles probably. So it's gone down from 10 to 8 to 5 to 4 to 4. But what I'll be interested to look at is his passing and rushing attempts combined. In 2019, his MVP year, he had 577. And I think, once again, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to break that, which could lead to some really good production. So, like I said, for Lamar, I see a lot of people go each way. I want to give this stat to Jordan Vanek last year, or who put it out today. So in the first preseason game with Todd Monken, on 82.9% of dropbacks, they had 3 wide receivers. And in their last preseason game with Greg Roman, it was at 62.1% of dropbacks with 3 wide receiver sets. So I think this stings Mark Andrews a little bit, just being overvalued at ADP 27. And I think for wide receivers, especially Zay Flowers, you should bump them up. Zay Flowers is a pretty much carbon copy of Marquise Brown. They're the same height. Zay Flowers is 2 pounds larger and runs 0.1 second difference in the 40-yard dash. But we can question Lamar's accuracy, and a lot of times outside the numbers it has been. You can't question his arm strength. And I think Zay Flowers is going to be the deep threat. And if you haven't been on Twitter like David, check out his video from today.
I tweeted the video, so I've been on.
I was like, David definitely.
I know.
Yeah, and his Mike D said he can catch too.
Yeah, I like the Ravens this year. I think Zay's going to be great. I think the only person I'm really not touching is Odell Beckham. That's about it. I just don't want to play with that. Everybody else, I'll take the shot. Why not?
Isaiah Likely, though, that's my sleeper from the team.
I like Likely.
You think he's likely to be a sleeper?
I'm quitting.
See, mine was not a dad joke. I legitimately like Likely. I didn't play with the whole likely he'll be a sleeper.
David, Zach's better than you at dad jokes, by the way.
Well,
I hope you saw.
I'm not yet.
It's true. 3 times over. I hope you saw some of those because I crushed that one episode. I think I got like 3 in there. I was like, I'm making David proud if he's watching.
What do you remember what they were? The dad jokes are the best.
We do not need to repeat the dad jokes.
I don't remember. I know they were good in the moment, but when you have to try to recall them, it's not the same.
That's
you have
true.
To be in the moment. With that, in the moment, let's move to the Pittsburgh Steelers real quick. Joe, what's going on over there?
Again, really, do I have to? Is this just because I didn't answer in the group chat fast enough?
Yes.
This is just, yeah, pretty much, pretty much. But like, quarterback situation, we know it. It's Kenny Pickett. It's not somebody you want to draft. It's not somebody I want. You have people like Derek Carr above him. I'd rather him. Brock Purdy, I'll take a shot on him with the better weapons, the better offense, in my opinion. So we're going to skip right over that. We're going to kind of skip over my sleeper and my rookie pick again because it's Darnell Washington, and it's mostly just like a streaming tight end to use if you decide to play the waiver wire all season. The man is a monster. He will be in on every goal line package, which will always give you the threat of a touchdown, which is what you're looking for from tight ends when you're streaming them off the waiver wire. Now, to piss off Zach, my overvalued player is Jalen Warren. I don't understand the hype. I get it. He's super athletic. Like, I've heard all the conversations. That's great. Mike Tomlin uses one running back like nobody else does in the NFL. He has a workhorse. He loves that style. And what he has is a first-round draft capital running back in Najee Harris. Do we think he's the most athletic? No. Is he going to use him 20 times a game? Yes, because we have seen it, and history repeats itself. And if we're looking at him at the 49th overall back on Fantasy Pros, people beneath him, Kenneth Gainwell, with everything going on, I'd probably rather take the shot there in the better offense. Tank Bigsby, we've already talked about that. I'd rather take that shot as well. I don't see the hype on Jalen Warren. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be in every game to the point where they're not going to go and put Jalen Warren in and just start dropping it off and checking it down. I'm not in on it. I just don't see the upside that everybody else sees. So please change my mind.
Let's be honest. No one's changing your mind. You're the most stubborn one on this show.
Oh, so true.
Yeah, I say that with love and accuracy. But no, to me, he's a handcuff. Let's be honest. He's not somebody that you should be picking up. I mean, he's a running back 49 right now. You're not picking up to start him. But I do think there might be a little bit of a change in the offensive philosophy with them using a little bit more of him, but we'll see. I agree with you though that so far we have never seen him that setup be useful unless Najee Harris gets hurt. But at that late in the draft, yes, I would prefer Tank Bigsby. You named him Kenneth Gainwell. Yes, I agree. But those guys are all going to be so interchangeable when you are actually drafting. That's just ADP that I still would look at Jalen Warren if he falls to the right spot.
Do you think oh, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Okay.
Do you think Darnell Washington will be a good guy to bet on early on in the season because FanDuel might have his touchdown odds so low, but he might be like a Jawan Johnson and just get a bunch of touchdowns as a tight end?
I'll take the shot. I'll take that shot. It can't be high. There's no way that's a high touchdown total. So I'll take that shot on that bet. Do you know what it is?
I don't think they have the numbers out yet, or they don't have the odds out yet. I could be wrong, but
that's how bad they think he's going to be. But
like he's a rookie tight end, and he's not the starter, so I could see him being like towards the bottom.
Yeah, but he's 9'2", 7,000 pounds. Like, and that's why I think put him in.
I think they'll adjust it as the season goes along and he starts scoring touchdowns. But I feel like he could be one of those guys you could early on take advantage of, knowing that he's going to be in the goal line package.
Just think of the point. You're on the 1 yard line. You're lining up your linemen. You put the 6th lineman and Darnell Washington in there. You fake the handoff and you just have him run out to the pylon and bam, you just hit him right there every time. You could do that 3 to 4 times and have like a Kyle Juszczyk type player, but he's going to be more of a waiver wire situation. And I'd rather do it against teams that have really bad linebackers and safeties that do not cover the tight ends well, because that's when I'll take the shot.
I'll see like the 1 catch for 2 yards and a touchdown, like probably his box score. Like 1 catch for 2 yards, touchdown. Next game, 2 catches for 14. Next game, 1 catch for 7 yards, touchdown. Like I feel like that's going to be his box score.
That's going to be 100%. And look, it really wouldn't even shock me if at one point they're just like, you know what, get in the backfield. We're going to hand it to you like a fullback. You're humongous. Fall forward. Like it should be in the playbook. And if it's not, Mike Tomlin, call me.
That'd be a Matt Canada issue, not a Mike Tomlin issue.
Well, Matt Canada is not allowed to talk to anybody. He doesn't have, when you give your like preschool nephew a cell phone and like you press the cow and it moves, that's his phone. He's not allowed to be a part of any conversation.
I think that's the only thing fantasy Twitter has ever agreed upon.
Is Matt Canada being terrible at offense?
Yep. Oh, he's terrible.
I don't know how he kept his job. Not that we want to root for anybody losing their job, but I was shocked that they kept him this year. But with that, we'll move on to the last team. We finally made it, guys. the Cleveland Browns. And for me, I feel like this team is pretty straightforward from a fantasy standpoint. You either are in or out on Deshaun Watson, whether that's because of his offseason stuff. If you don't want to draft him, no one's going to tell you have to draft him. That's your own personal preference. I think he's actually a pretty good value at QB9 right now. If you believe that he's actually going to have some upside, we shall see. And sorry, I'm just reading some notes real quick. And then if you don't believe in him, don't draft him. It's that simple. There's plenty of other QBs around him. It's really just, if you like him, go for him. If you don't, by all means, you can avoid him very easily. And then we get to the fantasy sleeper. For me, is Elijah Moore. He's at wide receiver 51 still, 144 overall. I think that's great value. He looked great at the end of his rookie year, if you guys remember, for the Jets. And then he got stuck with Zach Wilson. And wow, did it get bleak last year. He did not want to play anymore. That man was dejected. He was just he was done. He looks great so far in training camp. We've seen a lot of highlights. He has the ability to be dynamic, to get open down the field. And we all know Amari Cooper is the wide receiver 1. He's going to be the wide receiver 1. So you're going to get favorable coverage for Elijah Moore. I really like Moore that late in your draft. I don't think they have any overvalued players on their team. Looking at all the ADPs, they all seem pretty fair. I think Nick Chubb's actually being undervalued right now.
Mhm.
Amari Cooper is fair and Njoku's fair. I mean, I don't really see anybody there that I'm like, oh, that's an egregious ADP. So if you like the Browns, I think you can get plenty of Browns on your team or get the ones that you want to target in your draft. And then the best fantasy rookie, they don't have anybody you should really consider drafting. It's really just Cedric Tillman, their wide receiver. He might be their wide receiver 5 or 6. He might be on he's probably not going to be on the practice squad, but he's probably not going to play much. So I would be going no rookies for that team. All right. So
one last thing I'll say before we get out of here. Zach, you have Nick Chubb as your RB1, correct?
yeah, so I don't do rankings, but I did put out an article with FS Face Off. Sorry to talk about another brand.
No, you're good. We're all-
And yeah, I feel like he is going to be the running back 1.
I have him as my
this
RB2.
year.
I think that he's undervalued, like you said. I think his passing game usage is going to go up a lot this year. So I think some people think it's crazy, think that he's a top 3 running back in PPR, but me and you are on the same page as a top 3 this year.
We've
And I
seen
think his
Derrick
best season's
Henry
like
have that.
RB8.
I was going to say, we've seen Derrick Henry all of a sudden be able to catch balls in year 6. So why can't Nick Chubb?
Yeah. Well, I did some very basic math. If you just bump him up just a little bit, he can easily get to 50 catches for the season, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. It's three catches a week. I mean, it's nothing crazy. Like, he doesn't have to do crazy numbers as long as he's getting touchdowns. Is really what it comes down to. If he's not scoring touchdowns, but no one's going to be the RB1 if they're not scoring touchdowns. So, but I just think he's just such a dynamic runner. He's one of the best deep play runners, makes big plays, and he's, I think, got the third best yards per carry ever all time. Like, just crazy stats going into this.
He might
this
be
year.
the most durable running back in today's game. Like, Derrick Henry
Yeah.
had his big injury. I can't remember of Nick Chubb having. I think
he's
sprained
had
his
a couple
MCL
ankle.
once.
Yeah, and then he had an ankle thing before, but yeah, he doesn't miss a whole lot of time. But yeah, so I'm all in on Nick Chubb. He's my favorite. He's my guy. But yeah, I didn't really bring him up because you draft him anyway. But I think no matter where you get him in your draft, it's a steal.
Agreed.
Great.
Cool. So with that, we went with the double dip for sure, going about an hour this week, which is, I mean, it's been fun to get back on here. We got a lot of more content coming out as we get closer to the season. So if you're still watching with us, please make sure you go and like the video, subscribe to the channel. The team puts out a ton of content. It's not just football. We are Triple Play Fantasy because we got baseball, basketball, football, and even more than that. So go ahead, support the team. It's the best way to help us out. And we thank you all. We'll see you guys. Can't believe it. Hopefully next week, but we're getting real close to the season. So we're here to help you win your league. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.